Hey guys, how you doing? And welcome back to another gospel reflection. So in today's gospel, Jesus is once again very challenging, very demanding. And so this rich man goes to Jesus, asks Jesus, "What must I do to inherit the eternal kingdom?" And then Jesus tells this rich man, the commandments. And at this point, the rich man is very happy and proud, that he's fulfilling these commandments. But then Jesus says something to him, which then pushes him to tears, and he in fact storms away. So Jesus then tells him, "Sell all your property." And so now we could ask ourselves, why can't the rich man, have both? Why can't the rich man have both the wealth, and at the same time, why can't he, enter the heavenly kingdom, worship God, and enter the heavenly kingdom? And the answer to this comes down to the question of how do we actually worship the Lord? And we have this answer in Mark's Gospel. So in Mark chapter 22, verse 37, it says this, and he said to him, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might." And so there are like three conditions or four conditions to how we worship the Lord. We have to love our God with all our heart, with all our soul, with all our mind. So that's three. So we need to love God with these three, aspects of our lives, of our body, And so this rich man, when we look into his life, the very fact that he stormed away shows, because he had to sell his property, shows that he may have loved the Lord our God with his mind, but his heart was not there. His heart was not completely with God, because Jesus had told him to get rid of the very thing that he was dependent upon, which was his wealth. So in other words, when it comes to worship of God, and when it comes to our journey in entering the kingdom of heaven, it is not enough that we worship the Lord with our minds, but our heart needs to be there as well. And when we put our heart to God, give our heart to God, it also shows that we are trusting God, entrusting God. And when we look at Franciscan spirituality, one of their charisms is a life of poverty. And the reason why poverty is so essential for Franciscan spirituality is because they rely completely on God's providence, God being the provider for them in all things. And so their mind and their heart, and their soul is completely towards God. So this simplicity of life that Franciscan spirituality is one that's completely orientated around complete trust in God. So today I want to speak about how simplicity can in fact help us in our prayer life and help us in our journey getting closer to God and towards his eternal kingdom. When we look at the world around us, we can say that there are some people that are gifted with a good financial situation, who are quite well off, quite wealthy. But it then comes down to how they use their wealth. Do they use their wealth, to help others, to share? Do they share their wealth with those in need, or do they, get to a point where they become idealistic about it? Where they live more for money than anything else. And so it's good, and it's a blessing sometimes to have, a good wealth, a good financial life. But if then that becomes the dominating factor of your life, that is where you then start to drift more and more, away from God. Because like that rich man, your heart will then not be with God. You see, St. Paul reminds us in his letter to Timothy that money is the root cause of all evil. So when we become idealistic about money, when money starts to dominate our life, sometimes it can then bring in pride into your life. It can bring in greed into your life. It can even bring in envy, and jealousy. And money can sometimes destroy families. It can destroy relationships. But that is only if money becomes the idol in the life of an individual. it can bring destruction. And that is why Jesus in today's gospel also reminds us that there is greater treasure that we can inherit, but that treasure comes at a cost of living a life of simplicity, living a life of detachment. You know, people may have told you before, be detached, be detached. And when we actually think about what it means to be detached, it means to not let something dominate your life. So in other words, when you become more detached from something, you are making sure that you have authority, you have that control over things that can possibly dominate you. So if you're detached from materialistic things, you are making sure that the materialistic things in this world do not become the sole factor, or for what you live for. It does not become the thing that dominates your life completely. And so, detachment is essential in the spiritual life. And, when it comes to our journey towards the heavenly kingdom, having this detachment, especially towards materialistic things like money, is incredibly important. That is why, it's so, essential that we strive for a life of simplicity, because a life of simplicity comes with detachment. And like I mentioned, Jesus reminds us that there's this greater treasure, in heaven, and this treasure in heaven can be only inherited if we first strive for that life of simplicity here on earth, giving our mind, heart, soul, and strength, all to our Heavenly Father. My dear friends, I too, want to challenge you today. So if perhaps you feel that money is becoming a dominating factor in your life, if you are starting to be more dependent on money than God, then from this day onwards, try and, detach yourself from that mentality and try and entrust yourself more to God. And like with Franciscan spirituality, try and, depend on providence. And, it's hard to do this. And so this is something that we need to really bring into our prayer life. Ask God to give you that grace of detachment. And then God listens to these prayers. Jesus listens to these prayers. And if you are seeking the Lord more than anything in your prayer life, then He will give you that grace that you need to live that life of simplicity and be detached from things that are material. So thank you so much, guys, for listening. I hope you have a great week ahead. God bless.